Vash, can you hear me? Could you make Lizzie Horton a co-host, please?
Okay, we'll do it. Let's just. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. My name's Jackie Burke, and I'm from Greater Manchester and District CND and Oldham Peace and Justice. I'm just going to be facilitating tonight. I just want to let you know not to worry if you've got a blank screen and you're muted as well. That's just so that we can listen to our speakers, and then at the end, when we get to the Q&A, if we have time to bring people in personally, we will do, but we'll be picking up your questions in the chat box. So please do put any questions in the chat box. And to those people on Facebook, if you want to put any questions on there, we'll try and pick up as many as we possibly can. I'm now going to the Q&A is going to come after you've heard all of the speakers, of course. I'm now going to pass on to Jackie Greenfield. I'm going to ask Jackie Greenfield to come in, who's going to start us off this evening. Thank you, Jackie.
Hi, I'm going to tell you all about Oldham Peace and Justice and highlight a couple of points that we want to share. Oldham Peace and Justice is a campaigning group bringing together a number of peace activists, Palestine solidarity groups and other local campaigners and activists in Oldham. Our aim is to build on the opposition that we know exists amongst Oldham residents to Elbit Systems UK. Many people are horrified to find that there is an Israeli-owned arms manufacturer on their doorstep, and one that has been involved both directly and indirectly in the Israeli bombardment of Gaza in 2014 that had led to very angry protests in Oldham at the time. Indeed, in July 2018, at one of our particular protests and march, a number of people spontaneously joined in the 2-mile walk from Oldham town centre to Cairo House on Green Acres Road in Waterhead, which is where it's based. And this was notable because it was at the same time as a World Cup match, if I recall. Now, this had previously been Ferranti Technologies, a company that is still well known in Oldham, as it was a very large employer. It was bought out by Elbit Systems in 2007, with a workforce now of approximately 120 to 130 people. Ferranti Technologies as such does still exist as a separate brand, if you like, and it has its own website, etc. So we're an active group. We have over 300 people on our contact list, a large number of whom I know are with us tonight. We do the usual campaigning things. We have market stalls, including a stall outside the Sixth Form College in Oldham. We produce leaflets, posters. We organise door-to-door leafleting, particularly in the immediate area around the Elbit site. We've spoken at a free Kashmir demonstration in Oldham in 2019. We've organised a petition that's ongoing and currently has over 800 signatures. We've held public meetings. We've held a Zoom event, and we have regular vigils outside Elbit. The vigils have become increasingly important as they're a very visual form of protest, making it clear to local residents and passers-by what exactly is going on in what looks like an old mill building. There is no company names outside there, it's just Cairo House. We plan to hold our vigils at the same time as the staff clocking off. On the days we are there, they drive out in convoy, waved on by Elbit security personnel and the police. Sometimes we chant, sometimes we're silent. Sometimes we just show them pictures of the children who we know have died in Palestine as a result of bombardments and the illegal occupation. We have tried to engage with the staff, but there is no official union. In the summer, we tried to deliver a letter, but we're not even allowed to present it at reception. We had a video on this instead, which is on Facebook. We have attempted to involve local politicians. We know that some of the councillors are sympathetic to our campaign, particularly around the idea of arms conversion, but there has been a reluctance for anyone to join our activities. In 2019, we asked questions to a full meeting of Oldham Council. This got press coverage, because the leader at the time admitted that he did not know if Elbit Oldham was manufacturing weapons that were used on people in Gaza. We have also made it our business to share information that we have gathered through research and a number of freedom of information requests. This has been undertaken diligently by a very persistent member of our group that's not able to join us this evening, but does a lot of work. We are pleased that recently one of our local MPs, Debbie Abrahams, put her name to an early day motion calling for COVID-19 vaccinations for Palestinians in the occupied territories. And even more recently, she signed EDM 114, which calls on the government to immediately ban all UK trade with illegal Israeli settlements and take action to prevent equipment supplied by British companies, including JCB, from operating in them. Over this past year, we have continued to hold local COVID compliant protests when we can, and we've held some virtual events and posted videos, etc. We know we have interest and there are many followers. In the summer of 2019, we supported a three-day rooftop occupation of Elbit Oldham. 3 activists amazingly climbed onto the roof and closed the facility down. A temporary roadside peace camp was established that created a really good local focal point for passers-by and supporters and attracted some press coverage. We held a local street meeting a few weeks later, attended by local residents and supporters. It is the direct actions last year and the recent actions that have inspired this particular meeting and brought the Elbit Out of Oldham campaign into the public eye. Through our actions, big and small, our aim is to keep the pressure on Elbit UK and get Elbit out of Oldham. Elbit Systems is Israel's largest private military arms company. It makes a wide range of weapons systems and technologies developed through extensive real-world combat experience, and we know what this means. Elbit now has 10 facilities in the UK. Elbit Oldham used to be Ferranti Technologies, as previously mentioned. Its acquisition in 2007 was part of Elbit's stated aim of firmly establishing a UK market for its, and I quote, products and solutions. In 2017, Elbit Systems made its debut appearance at London's Dicey Arms Fair. The then Executive Vice President Internal Marketing noted the significance of this for the company at the time. Quote, "We must treat Britain as an actual home market similar to the USA." They were well aware that by being branded a British company, that they would then be able to develop long-term markets. This they have done very successfully. We know, for example, that on the Ferranti Technologies website, one of the shop fronts as we see it, there are large numbers of products that we know are to be part of Elbit's back catalogue and could not possibly have been made on the site in Oldham. These include wide ranges of intelligence gathering, surveillance and target acquisition systems, currently, for example, in the Hermes drones, and which are now fitted to tanks designed to operate in narrow urban streets, a particular specialism of theirs. All these systems are sold as field tested. Of particular interest to us at Oldham Peace and Justice is the fact that Ferranti Technologies received government monies some years back to develop its business from an organisation called Sharing in Growth. Sharing in Growth is a training and networking quango set up in 2013, initially very much around the aerospace industry. Of course, it has received grants from the Department of Business, Industry, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And in turn, we know that monies were awarded to Ferranti Technologies through regional growth programmes. And that one of these, it was a 4-year programme that is only ending this year. We have been trying to find out more about these grants, but we are told that Sharing in Growth does not have to comply with freedom of information requests because it's a quango. We do, however, know that there are close links still with Sharing, as one of the non-executive directors is a director at Ferranti Technologies. In many ways, this comes as no surprise. The murky links between arms industry, governments, and the lack of concern about human rights records, destination countries of contracts is a common worldwide thread. The arms trade is almost impossible to hold to account through official channels, so we make our own. In 2019, the Ministry of Defence and Security Equipment Procurement announced at the Dicey London Fair again this time in 2019. We are investing 31 million in a new contract to provide the joint fire synthetic trainer at multiple UK sites. This is an incredible Israeli idea, she said, built in Oldham, which will sustain 30 jobs and allow students from the Army, Royal Navy and RAF to train simultaneously together in realistic and complex battlefields. This is intriguing, as it is not made in Oldham as such. There are at least 9 other companies involved in this contract. We have no idea if 30 jobs have been created. There is no immediate evidence of that. The training simulators use real life scenarios, a direct link again with the oppression of Palestinian people. Not something we want on our doorsteps in any event. On the 21st of January 2021, the UK Ministry of Defence awarded Elbit Systems UK a 5-year contract for something called the New Dismounted Joint Fires Integrator System. The significance of this is that it is purchased linked with yet something else that Elbit Applications has sold to the Department of Defence called a management conflict system. It's part of the British Army's modernisation plan. It has ensured that it's involved for some years to come. Business as usual for Elbit, but not for us. That is why we will continue our own campaigning here in Oldham, and why it is great when organisations like XR North and Palestine Action hold Elbit to account so visually and dramatically. So thank you. And please, if you want any more information about Oldham Peace and Justice, I hope that you'll have a Gmail address in the chat, and we have a Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jackie. That's great. We're now going to bring in Wakas, if Wakas is ready.
Hi, everyone. Really overwhelmed by the amount of people that we've got in this Zoom call. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the link between Oldham and Kashmir and how an Israeli arms factory in Oldham might be complicit in the crimes that are happening in Kashmir, occupied by Pakistan and India. But I'm looking at India and the amount of arms it receives from Israel. Now, on the 5th of August 2019, Modi unilaterally revoked Article 370, which gave independence to the Kashmiri people in India to the right to self-determination. This right was taken away, just like the rights of the Palestinians is taken away in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. When this right was taken away, there was a lockdown, a curfew, people couldn't gather, elections were stopped, and he was convincing people from India to move to Kashmir that India occupies to build. And we've seen these similar buildings and the government trying to encourage people to move to an area that's occupied. We've seen this settlement expansion in Israel, and it's happening in Kashmir. There have been 91 civilians that have been killed over the past 2 years, and these figures are from the Jammu and Kashmir Coalition of Civil Society. We're seeing an occupation in Kashmir, and India is learning from its friend Israel. Israel is the exporter of technology, and not only the technology, but also the knowledge on how to occupy people. This is being transported all around the world. Now, the population in Oldham has quite a large Kashmiri population, and we do see the similarity. That's what's happening in Kashmir is happening to the Palestinians as well. So it's a joint struggle, and the Free Kashmir movement have been taking part in demonstrations taking place in Oldham. So that's the current situation in terms of Kashmir and Oldham, really. But what's really worrying at the moment is that Elbit Systems was invited to India this year to the Aero India display in 2021, And on their press release, Elbit proudly announced that they showcased surface-to-air missiles software that's been used to keep an eye on civilian people. So, and it's also building weapons in India. So Elbit Systems is building weapons in India. So the Hermes 900 drone that the UK Maritime Agency uses is being built in India as well by the Adani Group. So there is a close link there. I just want to quickly mention something. So some of the FOIs that we did about Elbit Ferranti, it was disclosed to us that there have been a few licenses granted to Elbit Ferranti. So I've got the figures here. So since 2015, 4 applications were made by Elbit Ferranti to export weapons as an open general license, and there were 35 applications of standard individual licenses by Elbit Ferranti, and that was told by us by the Department of International Trade. But when we asked them where they were being exported to, they made it clear that it wasn't in the public interest for us to know, and they did not have the consent of Elbit Ferranti to share that information. So we do know since 2015, since the bombing of Gaza in 2014, that Elbit Ferranti in Oldham has been exporting something to somewhere. And what I would like to find out is Elbit Ferranti in Oldham exporting weapons to India? So, and one of our main campaigns is to find out where these weapons are going. And we've tried the legal channels, and the door's been shut in our face. So we've got to find other ways to find this information, because we can't allow these weapons in Oldham to end up in Kashmir or Palestine or Saudi Arabia or Myanmar or Azerbaijan or France or Germany or Brazil or Thailand. All these countries that are on our own human rights watch list should not be receiving weapons that are built in Oldham or in the United Kingdom. I'm going to return it back to Jackie, but just before I do finish off, if anyone wants any more information about the export license that we find out, send us an email and I can send that out to people. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Akas. Thank you very much. As Norma has said in the chat box, if anybody's got any questions for any of the speakers, please put your name down or your question down, your name and question down in the chat box, and we'll come to you later. I'm now going to bring in our friends from Extinction Rebellion. Joel's there. I can see now. And Joel's been involved with Extinction Rebellion from the early days, summer 2000. Was it 2018? Yeah, it must be 2018. So I'm going to pass you on, and thanks ever so much, Joel.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm actually going to pass to Lizzie, who's going to go first. So pass to Lizzie, who, introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also been part of Extinction Rebellion since August 2018, quite early on, when we were just a small kind of group of people fighting for system change. And I think that kind of is quite relevant in the link between XR and Palestine Action in the action that we recently did at the beginning of February. But I think first of all, I just wanted to kind of restate the link between a personal link between kind of climate change campaigning and campaigning against the Israeli apartheid. And it kind of started at university. Me and Huda, co-founder of Palestine Action, were part of 2 campaigns, BDS and People and Planet. And we were both campaigning on what seemed like quite disparate issues, but was brought together by the issue of divestment and trying to get the university to take its money out of the fossil fuel industry and companies complicit in Israeli war crimes like Caterpillar. And and kind of through that campaigning, through that joint campaigning, we were always kind of outside the Board of Governors meetings, shouting and like protesting for divestment. We kind of realized, I mean, I think it was more, maybe People and Planet realized more that that this is a kind of an intersectional issue, and that the same attitudes that don't value Palestinian lives are the same attitudes that don't value any protection of life on this planet. And that's through the exploitation and the colonization of countries around the world, through the pumping of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, through the destruction of biodiversity, the multitude of different destructions of life, of various different forms of life. And so I think it's important to highlight that when we as XR North kind of stepped up to join this campaign and fight against or fight to shut Elbit down, it wasn't just about the climate, as XR has kind of often been pigeonholed for the last 18 months of its existence. And when it was actually originally set up as a kind of a movement to fight for system change. And yeah, I guess like I think Joel will go into it a little bit more, but ultimately the reasons that we did it were because the arms industry props up the system that exploits people across the world. It extracts resources, that creates wealth and poverty, and it protects the small population of the world that creates this system, and it protects fossil fuels and the pumping of gases into our atmosphere. And so it's easy then to see how both these issues are linked. And I think also, I mean, we spoke about it in a previous talk more recently, the kind of the issue of the military being a huge contributor to global greenhouse emitters. In the UK, the military emits more CO2 annually than 60 individual countries. But in a way, I think for a lot of us in XR North who took part in that action, and also those who didn't, it was almost not worth saying that, because it was kind of a way to keep those who were just focused on the environment and climate change and greenhouse gases happy, that it was just that, because it's about so much more than that. It's about the protection of Palestinian lives. It's about being anti-colonialism, and if it's about system change and deconstructing the systems on under which we live, that we are so used to. And yeah, I'll just end on a point that, you know, if we in XR, as one of the kind of, for better or for worse, more influential movements at the moment, is if we are to be a movement genuinely focused on system change, then we need to continue to act in solidarity with people across the world. We need to continue to target the industries that murder and colonize people and countries, and those that systematically oppress people. But yeah, thank you.
Shall I go? Yeah, I mean, Lizzie's brilliantly kind of covered everything there, really. I'll just say a little bit more about how demilitarization is so integral to any sort of meaningful action to slow down ecological destruction. I think we can all see how like war and conflict are the most ecologically destructive things in the world. Obviously, they have the direct impact on human lives and suffering, but the effect they have directly on the wider living ecology is also uniquely destructive. Lizzie mentioned the UK military. The US military is the single biggest institutional emitter of carbon in the world. And there's no way of greening that, despite what some liberal politicians will say when they talk about greening the military. It's a completely nonsense concept. The only way to reduce the horrendous ecological impact of the world's militaries is to reduce them dramatically. And there's no, I think, better symbol, but better also literal, tangible representation of the two directions we can go as a species, in terms of whether we choose to deal with the escalating ecological crises and, you know, increasingly scarce natural resources by conflict, like whether there'll be new arms races, whether we will be fighting water wars in the next few years, whether we'll be fighting over fertile land. That is one direction that is obviously very plausible and currently is the direction we're headed. The other option is unprecedented international collaboration, that can't be built on, you know, the endless forever war we've seen over the past however many decades. And the arms trade is the heart of that. Like, if we continue to allow people to make a killing through the manufacture and sale of deadly weapons, that's so clear which of these paths we're taking. And that's why I think for us as members of XR and XR North, like, the arms trade is so central to everything that is propping up what we need to change. And we can't ignore that. It's such a central pillar to what is keeping the system as it is. And so whether people are coming from the angle of, you know, Palestine or Kashmiri solidarity, whether they're focusing on the arms trade themselves, or whether people have come in from a more environmental angle, like, the arms trade is so unavoidable in terms of something we have to confront and something we have to kind of bring into the open more. And that's why I think these kind of direct actions are uniquely powerful in forcing the spotlight onto this issue and onto, like, you know, one of the most shady, corrupt industries in the world. A lot of people in Oldham would have no idea that any of this stuff is going on in Oldham, and that's how companies like Elbit and, you know, other arms manufacturers, they want to keep it. Like Wakas was saying, like, the state will just say, "Oh no, we're not telling you that." When you ask who they're exporting weapons to, because we know the British state exports to the most human rights abusing regimes on the planet. And like Lizzie said, like, XR has achieved quite an incredible growth from when it was just 15 people in a cafe just a couple of years ago to now genuinely operating in, like, dozens of countries around the world. And if we are to continue to grow to be the truly international mass movement we need to be, and we need to contribute to really change things globally, because I'm assuming everyone in this call knows, you know, mostly, like, the severity of the ecological crises. It's impossible to overstate how bad the situation is on a global scale in terms of the damage to the climate systems and the biodiversity systems. Without the most radical change we can imagine and beyond, we're not going to prevent these crises getting worse. And that will require a mass movement, an international mass movement that the world has never seen before. And I think that's what part of this is, to contribute towards growing that. And yeah, I'll stop rambling. But yeah, thank you so much for having us here. It's been, like, a real pleasure to learn more about your Oldham Peace and Justice. And yeah, it's very inspiring to hear from you. So thank you.
Thank you both. It is great, and obviously the more the merrier. There's already a few different groups that people representing different groups that are part of Oldham Peace and Justice, and there's room for all of us. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to bring in, oh, by the way, while we're talking about it, please do have a look in the chat box. There are some links there for donations to Palestine Action, so please follow that link and make a donation if you can. So I'm going to bring in Huda, Rich and Millie now from Palestine Action to speak. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having us. Millie can't speak on this one, so you just stuck with us too, unfortunately. I just want to begin by thanking Oldham Peace and Justice for putting this on. It's so great to see so many friendly faces, and it feels like a reunion, so I'm really glad to be here. So yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? I just want to start on talking a bit about my personal history and then going into Palestine Action today. So I am Palestinian on my father's side, and my great-grandfather was actually shot and killed by British soldiers shortly after Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, which was essentially giving away the land of Palestine to make a Jewish homeland which meant ethnically cleansing more than the Palestinian people, the indigenous population, where 97% of the population were not Jewish, so we're not welcome in the state of Israel. It was shortly after this, my great-grandfather was killed and left my great-grandmother a single parent during the early 1920s, and that's never easy, but especially wasn't easy back then. And she was pregnant at the time, and that's why I'm basically alive, because she gave birth to my grandfather shortly after he was killed. And it was after 1948 when Israel expelled more than half the Palestinian population, 750,000 Palestinians, in 1967, when my father, as a young child, was hiding under the table in his front room alongside his younger brothers and sisters, whilst the Israeli military were shooting into their home, in part of their ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. And their only way out was to crawl through the back of their house with just the clothes that they had on at the time, no shoes on, and had to run into caves and hide there for several days without any humanitarian aid. And this isn't a story which is unique. If anything, most Palestinians have much worse stories, which often always root back to Israel's apartheid regime and the occupation, which is ongoing. This happens to Palestinians all the time, and it gets worse. We see in West Bank, Palestinians constantly facing the threat of losing their homes. And in Gaza, Palestinians there have been under a brutal siege for over a decade, stripped of their basic human rights, and have to face constant bombings by the Israeli military. And this was in 2014, Israel killed 2,200 Palestinians in Gaza, a population which is mostly children. And subsequently, they killed 500 children in just 50 days. A lot of this was done by Israel's military drones, and 85% of Israel's military drone fleet is supplied by Elbit systems. Since 2018, we've seen Palestinians in Gaza march to the fence in protest of their entrapment under this brutal siege, and to demand the rights to return to their homes, a right stipulated under international law. And they marched peacefully to the fence, and they were met with live fire, with Israel sniping down and killing over 250 unarmed protesters, and injuring over 35,000. I mean, can you imagine if you go out on a protest and all your rights have been taken, and for Palestinians in Gaza, they have no choice. Their lives have basically been taken away from them before they're killed by Israel already. And on the first day of the Great Return March, a young 20-year-old Palestinian footballer was shot in the leg by Israel, and the only way to treat the injury was to amputate the leg, ending his career for simply going out to protest for his rights. And this isn't something which is happening far away. The UK basically was a key part in starting this ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, and continues to this day, over 100 years later, to support Israel's apartheid regime. So this is very much a responsibility which is very close to home for people here in the UK and globally. And Elbit then used, and I'm jumping a bit over the place, but when I grew up north in Bolton, and I went to Manchester University, and literally you see the complicity in this oppression of the Palestinian people everywhere. It's not just 100 years ago and they're having some meetings here and there with Israel. Literally our universities, and like Lizzie said, you know, it was amazing when we started campaigning, because our universities are both investing in the destruction of the planet and the destruction of Palestinian homes. And then when you see an Elbit factory operating just around the corner, which have market their weapons as tested, as people have mentioned before. This literally means they're tested on Palestinians, and they use this to export their weapons to oppressive regimes across the world. This isn't just a fight for the Palestinian people, this is a fight for all people who are oppressed by these arms, who are at the other end of these horrific weapons, which are produced essentially right in front of us, not in front of the people that they are used to kill. And I'm sure we'd all agree that if they were being made in front of the people which these weapons were used to kill, then people would be out there doing much more damage than we normally do when we do direct action against Elbit systems. But it's not. It's being made in our towns and cities. It's being made in Oldham. It's being made in the Midlands. It's being made in places where people of conscience live, where people care. And that's why we've had these campaigning activities happening for so long, because people can't stand for this. But with Palestine Action, launching Palestine Action as a direct action network, it was to say, we've had victories along the way as Palestine activists, but it's not matching the severity of Israel's apartheid regime. And whilst these factories continue to operate, we have no choice. I feel like we have no choice anymore. We have to take a stand. And sometimes that means we have to put ourselves at risk, bearing in mind that we never put ourselves at the same risk level that people living in Gaza and Kashmir and other places do all of the time. So with the launch of Palestine Action, it's focused on direct action, which means we go out there and we do it ourselves. We no longer appeal to the government to make the changes or to anyone else. If Elbit Systems is making these weapons and testing them on Palestinians, we will go out there and stop them ourselves. So our actions aim to damage, disrupt, and expose Elbit Systems. We do this through throwing red paint over their buildings and their factories to symbolize the bloodshed by this company. We disrupt them by offering our own bodies on the line, if that's literally lying on the road in front of them or climbing onto the roof. You know, these are simple things that most people are able to do. And damaging, yes, we cause damage to these companies, but the damage we do to this company pales in insignificance to the damage that they cause people every single day. And for example, there was an action taking place last week where activists got on the roof of UAV engines in Shenstone. They produced the engines for the drones which are used in, as I mentioned before. They were arrested after one day, but they caused over £50,000 worth of damage, which meant the factory was shut for over a week. If we do this day in, week out, they can't operate. They have to close down. So literally, the power is in our hands. And I've often felt very frustrated at the state of the world, at the state of these companies being able to operate here. But when I think my happiest moment was when I was on the roof of Elbit in Shenstone back in September, because I knew just sitting there on that roof, that factory wasn't operating. They weren't able to make these weapons, which were going to be used to kill people for those days. And in the end, it was shut down for 2 weeks. So we believe direct action works and is a necessary component to the overall movement, because we do have so much power in our hands. It's just what we choose to do with it, and if we're willing to take that level of action, which will close them down for good. Just 3 weeks after our launch of Palestine Action, the Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs actually had a meeting with Benny Gantz and Dominic Raab, where they basically tried to quash our movement. Which, to be honest, I was absolutely elated to hear, because I've been campaigning on this for, Palestine human rights for so long, and I hadn't had the Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs saying to crush something. So obviously, you're on the right track and you're doing something right if they're so desperate to stop you. And I think I'm probably going over my time slightly, and then let Richard talk. So I'll probably end on that note and hand it over to Richard.
Okay, I'll just be really brief. First of all, I want to say thank you to Oldham Peace and Justice for being there on the ground and doing this. So Palestine Action, we have one target. I know somebody's put in the chat recently, yeah? For us, we want to win. Some of us have been involved in this sort of things for many years, and we're fed up with not getting anywhere. So we've decided strategically that there's many companies that are complicit, JCB, la-di-da-di-da, yeah? But Elbit, it's the easiest one to get across to people. Yeah, they're such an evil company. It's easy to spread the message to people who are not Palestine activists. It's easy to spread the message to environmental activists and to people of conscience. So for us, concentrating on one company and one company only is how we win and how we get there, and not spreading our meager resources around. I think it's really good that in Oldham there's already a group doing that, because most of the other factories, when we go there, there's no other group doing things on the ground, and there's no one to pull in resources, and obviously post-COVID for support and that. So thank you for that. And we're going to be knocking on your doors and asking you more things to help. Because the other thing I would say is, and this is personal, so I've been involved with certain Elbit factories down mainly in Kent for a number of years, and we do it once every 6 months or once a year and go away and feel quite good about ourselves. We shut down this evil company, but really that had have no bearing on them, because they could build that into their risk assessments. They actually went on a 4-day working week, so they could deal with a day off a week. And actually the thing for us is sustained actions. It's not enough. When I hear Huda talk about her family background, when I hear people talking on here about what happens day in, day out in Gaza, and I think Adie's going to talk next, when I hear those things, those make me upset and angry. And it's not good enough for us, for me, to sit here and go, I'll plan this one thing perfectly for 6 months, when actually all I need to do, like anybody within our movement, whether they be 16-year-olds that we have or 69-year-olds who were on the roof last week, all I need to do actually is go and sit in front of the road and join hands with someone, and that may well shut down the factory. So for us, that sustained nature, the continual, and it ain't the last time that you're going to see us and XR and other groups more and more shut down this factory in Oldham, because in the words of the marvelous David Graeber, protest is like asking the powers to be to dig a well, whereas direct action is digging that well and daring the powers that be to stop you. And that's what I call on everyone here to do, to dig those wells themselves, to not ask other people. Yeah, our politicians, whoever they are, especially post-Corbyn, have failed us for many years and are going to continue to fail us. And let's do this ourselves. Let's do those things that actually work for direct action. And for us, those 3 important elements include disruption, a sacrificial element, and creating a dilemma. I'm glad Huda was here for that one. Okay, and those 3 things. So to disrupt, in our context of stopping Elbit systems, the only thing that's going to succeed is if we disrupt their evil business, and if we stop their evil business. And that can mean throwing red paint over their building at night. It can mean joining hands and standing outside there and singing hymns. It can mean smashing every single drone inside there and thing in there. It can mean any one or all of those things. If it disrupts their business, it meets that test. Okay, if it has a sacrificial element, if people come and say, why on earth is that 69-year-old man who's retired and worked all his life stood on a roof and smashing windows? Why is he doing that and getting arrested? That's ridiculous. And actually, when you have those conversations with us, and, you know, like Joel and Lizzie, I was around at the beginning of XR, and people would go, why are you sitting in the road in Elephant and Castle getting shouted at by everyone? And then they would have a conversation. And often those conversations would then be, okay, that's why you're doing it, because the world's going to shit. All right, I get it now. And when they see that sacrificial element, and then creating a dilemma, and this is where I want to end. The dilemma for us is providing that dilemma to the police, the dilemma to Elbit systems. I've been inside an Elbit factory and told when I walked out of it by the police, oh, can you just go home now? Well, you can leave whenever you want. You're not going to get arrested. And people like literally causing graffiti outside it because they're in a dilemma. What do? Do they risk the court case? Do they risk the press? Do they risk everyone in Oldham knowing what's going on in there going, we don't want this on our doorstep? So those 3 elements, dilemma, sacrifice, and disruption, are things that I ask everyone here to think about, and what part you can play in that. There's the part for everyone within this movement, whether it's within your own movement or whether it's in our movement. And there's many things you can do. You can join us, you can sit on the road and take part, you can give us all your money or just a bit of it. You can support at police stations, you can support in the way that you've been doing today, any one of those ways, but do something. Something has to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. Really fantastically passionate. Adie was going to do a rouser at the end of it, but we're getting the rousers sort of in the middle as well, which is fantastic. Let's keep with the rousing. So we're going to go into a Q&A now. And I think we've got Peter Lynch. If Peter Lynch is still here, could you raise your hand on your picture so that we can find you and bring you in? How does that sound? Bash, does that sound okay?
We're going to attempt. I'm not sure we can.
Shall we get?
Well, I think Peter's unmuted already. You see.
Ah. So
well,
Peter, Yes, Peter had a question for Jackie Greenfield.
Just a question. She used the expression arms conversion, and I just wondered what she meant by it.
Jackie, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. And Jackie Burke, you might want to come in here as well. I mean the transfer, diversification, if you like, using those skills not for making weapons and systems that track and kill, but for using the skills in the things that are socially, medically, environmentally more useful. I mean, it's something that the peace movement have been talking about for years. We have seen it happen. I mean, that was the amazing thing that came out of last year's awfulness, is that we have seen how quickly arms companies in particular can make equipment for intensive care. I know this is often talked about, but actually it can happen. So at the minute, you know, the Green Party, I know CND, Labour, trade unions in certain areas. I've been looking at this, a lot of work, if you remember back at the Lucas plant years ago, looked at all the ways that you can do that if the will is there. We have seen a hint of a political will. So it's easy for the politicians actually locally, because most of us would actually agree with that. You know, I think most reasonable human beings would agree that that is not a bad thing to aim for. So we've definitely got that as part of our, how we turn that into a reality is the challenge. And it's easy for the politicians to agree with that, but that's fine. At least we've got some agreement on something. Does anybody else want to add anything from the group?
I just want to add that diversification in communities is absolutely vital. When we look at the mining communities and the steel industry, how these communities were focused around one particular industry. Whereas if there's diversification and skills being used on a wider basis, then those communities are far more sustainable. So it just makes so much more sense. It just makes so much more sense. So yes, and as Jackie said, it's not new. It's not a new idea. The Lucas plan is actually, there's a new Lucas plan now, and there are people. I'm a member of a arms conversion defence diversification group made up of people from lots and lots of different areas and different interests and different skill sets. So it's something that is being worked on. And it's all part of the work around, as far as we're concerned, those campaigners around the Green New Deal. It should all, defence diversification and conversion should all be part of that.
And just to finally add, Oldham Council have got some pretty good policies on some of the things it's doing, green policies. So it would, for us, it's a good link, I feel. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Can Phoebe Spence make herself known? Can we bring Phoebe Spence in, please, Bash? Because Phoebe had a question, maybe for you, Wakas, or maybe the rest of us. Are you there, Phoebe?
Sure. Phoebe's online, is she?
Has Phoebe gone? Well, I'll tell you what the question was. Phoebe Spence, who's from Stockport for Peace, wanted to know, are Elbit systems used in the Yemen? Do we know that?
We don't know that if it's been used in Yemen, but I can tell you this much about Yemen. We definitely know BAE systems is being used in Yemen. The government cut its aid to Yemen, to poverty. We know the British government has breached a High Court injunction. We know campaigns against the arms trade have said in the past 6 months there's been 1.4 billion trade to Saudi Arabia in the bombing, and we know Saudi pilots are being trained by the British Air Force as well. Now, the government is complicit. It turns its back on humanity. It's turning its back on justice. So even if we get an arms embargo, even if we manage to do something, we can't trust the government to hold its word. The only way we're really going to hold the government to account is if everyone in society and every person knows what's happening in Palestine and our complicity, because what politicians only care about is their vote. So I'm just saying, get out there, and tell people about what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Yemen, what's happening in Kashmir, what's happening in Myanmar. And let's just make it really clear that the government should stop selling arms, full stop. That's it, really.
Can I just add something? The campaign against the arms trade have done a huge piece of research that's only recently come out about the extent of what countries sell to what, and over about the last 20 or 30 years. And what was interesting was each arms company, if you like, and trading countries sometimes specialize in different things. And Israel's specialisms tends to be to sell to areas where there's what they defined as smaller conflicts than the really big ones. And it is around the surveillance and tanks and cyber and all the rest of it. And that's their specialism. And that they make money just like anybody else by having specialisms in different places. So I don't know totally about the Yemen either, but you know, there's enough other awful places that they're involved in. And this new report by the Campaign Against the Arms Trade, something like Business as Usual, is fascinating. So anyway, that's me.
Rich, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I've got a great way where you can find out, because obviously these companies are really secretive. The best way I found to find out this information is to break into the factory and look at where they're addressing their boxes to. And that's only partially a joke, because when we broke into it in Kent, we found out they were selling them to Erdogan by literally seeing it on the box.
And also just to add to that, I think DW Saudi Arabia is a client of Elbit Systems. Whether or not they advertise it as being used in Yemen, I don't know if they've gone that far in their marketing campaigns. But we also know that, you know, the refugees which are travelling to the UK and across Europe, the UK authorities, Civil Aviation Authority, have contracted Elbit to supply those drones to surveil and essentially stop those migrants from seeking refuge in the UK. They've also been involved in building the US-Mexico wall with surveillance towers and drones there. So essentially, from the literal wars and terror that Elbit says is causing on people in their own homes across the world, they are also involved in causing terror when they are trying to seek refuge as well. So they essentially profit from all sides of war.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've got a question from Hilary Smith. I don't know if Hilary is still with us. Hilary, just give you a few seconds. Are you still here?
Yeah, Hilary's here. I think Hilary's
yeah, I've just unmuted.
Hi, Hilary. You wanted to ask a question, maybe to Jackie and to Wakas, maybe the others as well, actually, about the importance of Elbit being seen as a British company. Do you want to ask your question?
Well, it was just picking. I mean, thank you very much. Really good speakers and nobody duplicating stuff. So great presentations. It was Jackie, really, the point she made that I was interested in on how important it is to Elbit being based in Britain, which I think is an important thing for us as campaigners to think about. And you went through an awful lot of material, Jackie, so if you could come back to that point. But also, I guess in the past, I've been interested in finding out exactly what was being made in like Shenstone, where I've sort of campaigned most. But I guess there's another sort of messaging that we need to get across to people, including to our supporters who might say, okay, so this is a great campaign, but actually, so what if we get Elbit out of this country? We're not destroying the company as such. So I was just I think it's an interesting point for us to understand.
Yeah, okay, so it's a very determined strategic policy that Elbit have had from right early on. They know, and it's been a long game. If you think 2007, they certainly bought Ferranti, and the others must have come on board slowly. But it has been to make it become sort of normal, like a shop front, like shops that we get used to, companies that we get used to. And it is actually, I believe this is the case again in the arms trade in other countries as well. Israel feels it's got a home market then in its own country and the US and now the UK, and lots of those joint documents. We've got loads of information, Hilary, you're right. This is bare bones of what we might have presented today, but there are things, something like the Biocom report, British Israeli planning, and it's so clear. It's our ambassadors, it's Israel, it's trade. It is clearly written out about wanting to work closely together, and that the arms company needs to, they only make money if they sell to other countries in the end, arms companies. You can't continually sell to yourself, so you try and create other markets, and that is what they do, it by trying to become part of the scenery. So it's been very clever, and I mean, they've said it in so many, you know, don't even hide it. It's said in words of one syllable. We've got lots of quotes on it and things. And I know we keep going on about the shop front bit, and I had to used to think about it, but that is what we are, Oldham, and I'm sure that's the same with different versions of what's going on in other places. Yeah, okay, and that's been some of the work that we're doing with Campaign Arms Trade, and trying to eke out some of these bits of facts just to keep ourselves knowing what they're doing, I guess.
Is it all right if I quickly come in? They also been made in England or British made. What you've got to remember, Ferranti has been in Oldham for over 100 years. So every time we've had a protest or a demonstration, people are saying, why are you protesting outside Ferranti? And we'd say, it's owned by Elbit, an Israeli private arms company. And they all used to say, oh, my grandma used to work there. My aunt used to work there. So it's that Ferranti name. I think brands sell, and Ferranti is a brand as well.
Huda, did you want to say something, Ad?
Yeah, it was a kind of on the point about you know, what if you get rid of Elbit in the UK, they can go elsewhere. But I think getting rid of Israel's largest arms company from essentially what they call one of their strongest allies in the West, who's been complicit for over 100 years, would be such a strong message, and would have ripple effects beyond belief, and would be, I think, the greatest achievement of all time in terms of the international struggle in solidarity with the Palestinian people, to force them out of their strongest ally, because where essentially they may have had support from the government for over 100 years, the people are going to take a stand and force them out for good. And also, we hope that soon there'll be Palestine action and people taking direct action against Elbit everywhere where they are. But also, if you look at Elbit in terms of a map, they are massively concentrated. They've got 10 sites in the UK, and they've got a few dotted around Europe, but they are really quite concentrated here in the UK. And I think that's because of their strong diplomatic ties with the UK.
Thank you. I'm going to very, very quickly bring John Nicholson in, and then we're going to hear from Adi, if that's okay with everybody. John?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's very unconcerting looking at a few people on a screen, and there's all these other blank screens everywhere. So I can see you guys smiling, but no, you can't see me smiling back. Anyway, this is just fab meeting. It's excellent link up between Palestine Action and XR. Really good work there, and the link up with the local activists, obviously, for ourselves in Greater Manchester, and especially Oldham. And that's my question, really, and it's for both Palestine Action and for the Peace and Justice Group. How important is it for direct action protests to have supporters and support groups on the ground outside the factories, supporting it when the protests take place?
Huda, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I would say it's absolutely essential from all parts of it. The support on the action, having people around when people are doing direct action. There's a number of things that come up, and also just for morale in general. When you've got supporters around, every action needs support. And support is extremely crucial. From that to police station support, people being outside and, you know, kind of waiting for the people to come out and be able to support them there. It builds that community around it. And I think as well, when people get involved in a movement and they meet so many different people, and you automatically have this bond, even if you've only known each other 5 minutes, because you know you're doing this for the same cause, and you're doing it for the same reasons, and you automatically have that shared shared mutual support for each other. So definitely crucial. And if people as well, if you do fill in that join resist link and don't necessarily want to do direct action, but just want to be support, then do sign up to that so we can have people's details. So if something happens in one area, and sometimes, you know, when people or activists decide to autonomously take action, we don't normally always get a heads up to let everyone know, you know, ages in advance. So having people locally who can respond to things is always brilliant.
I think, yeah, I just want to add that I think it's imperative, actually. And obviously in the COVID times, it's been very difficult. But even some people on this call, when I was on the roof at Shenstone, seeing a group of people who all had Manchester accents come down and start waving flags and pinning them to the side. That was a moment when we were starting to feel a bit low and tired, when it raises you up. But it's more than that, because actually that's the stuff that can't be done. Yeah, if you're an activist and you're locked on, if you're activist on your roof or inside a building, you can't engage with the local public. You can't make it look better when the press turn up and realise it's not just three crazy people, but it's people of all ages who are stood there, who are prepared to talk to camera, who are prepared to take their risks. And I think I just finished with that in terms of the last action, the action that sparked this. One of our activists who was locked on for the first time, who was really, really nervous, a middle-aged woman, got in contact with us afterwards and said it was so nice when some of those local people came down and spoke to us and braved the whole kind of police telling them they were breaking the law. She said that made the difference for her, and that made the difference. That's how people carry on. And when we talk about sustained actions, we can't do it without more on-the-ground support from people who help us sustain it by their power and their presence, and that should never be underestimated.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Wakas in, and then we're going to move on to Adi.
Yeah, I just want to say, when Palestine Action and XR got together, and it'd be nice to hear from someone from XR, but when you two both got together in Oldham, everyone was in Oldham was saying, Extinction Rebellion are in town. Extinction Rebellion are in town. It was going around the whole town. And they said, oh, Extinction Rebellion are supporting Palestine. Extinction Rebellion are supporting Kashmir, or they're going after Ferranti, or Palestine Action are in town. And do you know what? I think that is the best sort of advertisement that we can give to raise the profile about what's happening in Oldham and in the UK. So I just want to say thank you for XR North for taking the first steps. And I'm sure and I'm certain that other Extinction Rebellion groups up and down the country are now looking for Elbit systems. They're looking for where these arms companies are. And I just want to say it was a great action outside the printing press. That was a really good action. And do you know what? That's the sort of groups and people that we need to invite. So thank you, Extinction Rebellion, for coming to Oldham. And if you ever want to come back, I'm sure that we'll give you a warm welcome. That's it. Good. Joel, do you want to say anything?
I'm going to bring Adi in now, because Adi's going to speak. So Adi, can you try to make it in? I know you said your connection's a bit tricky, but are you there? Are you there? It's becoming like a seance.
He's not, unfortunately. I think Adi might have just dropped off. I think he was on his mobile, so we just probably need to fill. Jackie, why don't you talk to us a little bit about maybe some of the fundraising requests that you've got while Adi's rejoining?
Yes, no problem. Well, I mean, I can, as a person that works for campaigns for Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament and has done for many decades, I've done a lot of support work around protests and demonstrations and lock-ons, and it's amazing what a pillow can do. And what a bottle of water can do, and some sun cream sometimes when the weather's good, can do for people that are locked on, that are doing the direct action. It's really important. It's really important to have that support around, and it's the very simple things that can make all of the difference. While we're waiting for Adi to find his connection. I'd encourage everybody to please support Palestine Action. Are you in, Adi? AD.
Yeah, my unfortunate reception seems to be questionable suddenly. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great. No, I just want to say it's brilliant to see so many amazing people doing so many great things, standing tall, standing strong, and getting themselves in the way for Palestine like we've never had before. I just want to give us from Gaza, as well as talk briefly about my time in Gaza. I was there for 2 years, and when I first got there and I saw all these houses condensed together, small refugee camps, and it was not that this place could have been carpet bombed. I could not believe that they would be dropping bombs. I was that was my very first. So many human beings are tightly packed together with mostly children. And when the bombs dropped, as they did when I was in Gaza, the reckoning again comes straight to your mind. Why are human beings building these weapons? How have we come to this? When the bombs drop, it's like the entire earth is shaking. And these are Elbit weapons. Elbit is building these weapons. And the end game, which I saw on the ground continuously with the bombs dropping, the rubble, the people. I'm going to use just my audio because then you might be able to hear me better, I hope. And they are the ones, it's like they're there. It's like they understand the urgency of what is happening on the ground. Because when I was at Shifa Hospital, and we were there many nights during the bombing of Gaza, during the Operation Pillar of Cloud, where they bombed Gaza non-stop for 8 nights, the amount of children that were coming into the hospital one by one, dusty, grey, lifeless, being rolled around in the intensive care unit. This is what mothers screaming and crying, and this trauma, this horror, this loss. If we were there, all of you were there and you saw it yourself, you'd be taking this direct action. Just like they succeeded for the Raytheon fact, they won the campaign. Where direct action was so impressed.
AD, Bash, could you disconnect AD and then reconnect him, please?
We can give it a try. I think he's suffering from a weak local internet connection.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about this, everybody. Shall we give it another try, AD? No. Maybe Wakas, do you want to come in?
I can.
Norma, thank you.
I mean, what Adie's describing, and I think any of us that have been to Palestine, but especially to Gaza, is, the absolute tragedy. People are there trying to get on with their lives, in the same way as anybody, anywhere. And what becomes normal there is that you're hearing the drones, you're fighting through rubble, you're forever having people shooting at you, bombs go all the time. And this is their normality, and it shouldn't be the normality of anybody. And we're all watching it. And luckily, we're not watching it. We're trying to do something about it. And I think the urgency that both Richard and Huda were saying, you really understand that, because you just can't bear the thought that these, that human beings are having to face this, and that other people are going into work every day, making a living out of after this misery. And yet, at the same time, you're with the people in Gaza, and they're, you know, trying to get on with their lives. They're really open, friendly. They don't understand, but what they do understand is that they're occupied and that they intend to carry on resisting, and just carrying on being is resisting. But they feel very isolated, and you do feel quite claustrophobic there, because, you know, there's not a lot of places to move. If you can only go 26 miles one way and 3 miles another way, or 6 miles another way, you go out into the sea and you're shot at, you go into your fields and you're shot at, then, you know, it's a really claustrophobic thing. And they really need to know that there's solidarity out here. And a lot of the videos, especially that PA are doing and so on, are really exciting for people. And the fact that we might not all want to climb up on, I know Richard said it was easy for us to climb up on the roof. I'm not convinced I could easily jump up there. But the fact that we're all working together is a fantastic thing, and we can do what we can do. And as long as we're supportive of each other, then I think we can then show that in Gaza that there's a big, wide movement out there. So this is really important, and we really want people supporting us in every way that we can, and not divide each other, but come together. That's the important thing on behalf of people in Palestine.
Yes, absolutely right. Adi, are you looking? You're looking pensive and prepared to give that another whirl. Your connection.
I just wanted to say at the end, and if I get cut out, I'm so sorry. I've no idea what my internet connection is doing. But the message from Gaza was that we support what you're doing. They understand the militarization and development of the weapons, of the deaths of so many, and the rivers of blood that I saw running through Gaza. They know what those weapons are doing to their lives. They're taking their family away from them. And actually, my student was killed. Many people know that. I was a teacher at the university there. My student, and her name sadly was Huda, and she and her entire family were killed. And I've just actually found, and I taught these 3 quirky women, and one of them was Huda, sadly. And they were very funny. It was actually in the refugee camp. And Norma knew her as well. And she was the funny one. She would get there early, tell me stories. And she got married. And then during the bombing of Gaza in 2014, like 2,200 people were killed in 51 days, 500 children. And I just brought up the message from Wafat, from her friend Wala. And she said, Adi, she tells me this at the moment. I'm actually on the roof of an arms factory while this message is being sent to me. And she said, do you remember Huda that was in your class? In fact, she was my friend. She was killed with her husband and 2 children and her mother-in-law. They killed her and her family by destroying her house on her head. They became small pieces, AD. Do you remember her? Really, AD, the way of killing her with her 2 babies destroyed our hearts. This is the message I got. And I'm on the roof of the arms factory at the time in 2014, and actually it was a drone, and they're building arms engines for drones. And I swear to God, if everybody was at the Shifa hospital, when those kids were coming in, those elderly people, those men, those women, many innocent men killed as well. It's not just the children, it's families wiped out. 90 entire families were wiped out during that bombing. If anybody was there, seeing those families and what carnage it brought, those weapons did. And to think that they're actually admittedly selling those weapons, developing those weapons, saying battle tested. Well, I saw those kids they were testing it on, and if anybody else did, they'd be on that roof. No one would question what they were doing. Everybody would be running to stop those weapons being built, just like they would with small-time gun runners on the streets when they know they're selling to criminals. These guys are selling weapons of mass destruction and cluster bombs, the bomblets kids are still stepping on and being blown up with, illegal. That's what Elbit's doing. So we all should be getting moving, like the Palestinians when they're marching towards the bullets, because we're not doing that. What we can do is much less. We have to use every tactic, no question. But the direct action tactic was used, and successfully, so many times in history. We all know that. And it's a massive component. And it's saying we stand in the way. We'll do it ourselves. It's the least we can do for Huda, the families that have been wiped out, and for everybody else that has lost loved ones. And it's not just in Palestine, but the whole world is supplied. And with all the worst regimes in the world are killing so many people by the Elbit weapons that they're developing on a human population. Never forget that. Ask yourself, will we look back and say we did enough if this continues? And it could continue if we don't step up. So thank you, Extinction Rebellion. Thank you, Palestine Action. Thank you, everyone who's supporting them, who's sticking their necks out to support them on the ground, sending reports out. We have to. You can't look at those kids that are being killed and those families, because I knew them. They're my friends that were wiped out. And they could have been your friends. They could be, because they were lovely and they deserve to live. And these weapons are being built off the backs of their deaths, and we cannot allow it. So well done, everybody. And we could all do a lot more. We can all go a lot further. So let's do it. We only live once. We might as well fight this horrible war machine. Let's do it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Adi. I'm so grateful. I think we're all so grateful that your connection came back in, because that was just, yeah, words just can't express. I want to thank absolutely everybody, everybody that's joined the meeting, all of the speakers, all of these wonderful, fantastic comrades that we've got around us, that we're all working together. It just shows how important it is that we all stick together and come out in solidarity and do absolutely everything that's within our power to do. Please make a donation. Please do make a donation. The link is there. If you've missed the link, get in touch with us at Oldham Peace and Justice and we'll send it to you. This will be going out as a recording and we can send the link. So again, get in touch with us if you want the link. And some people, I think, were leaving to go to branch meetings, and I asked them to let their branch know, I'm assuming it was a union branch, know what we were talking about tonight. So talk to people about what we were talking about tonight, and join us, please join us. Thank you very, very much, everybody. I'm going to close it there. I think it's been a fantastic meeting and we will definitely do more of the same. So thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.